Today we are talking about how to do a comparative market analysis. As you can see here, I've written down a number of questions that you can use essentially as a guide to walk you through this process. I literally just thought about how do I now go through this process with my experience. I put pen to paper, and here it is. Number one, what is the tax assessment value? Of course, as we know, the tax assessment value is not the same as the market value, but if you're on the phone with a potential seller talking about price and you bring up the tax assessment value as a benchmark, they are going to tell you right away whether they think that is high or whether they think it's low. And if you don't know anything else about this property, it gives you some place to start as far as very rough ballpark figure. Next, was there a recent appraisal? Again, the appraised value is not the market value, but it gives you a benchmark. Even if it's an older appraisal, it still could have some useful information in there. Is there any MLS history on the property? This is very critical because this will give you, in many cases, what the sellers originally purchased the property for. It might also tell you if the property was on and off the market several times, maybe with another agent before and didn't sell, or maybe they tried selling it years ago and it didn't sell, or maybe this property has sold countless times. Regardless, that is again all useful information. But it's going to tell you how many bedrooms, bathrooms, how many square feet, what the style of home is, what the neighborhood is, etc., which is a lot of really good useful information that you can use to compare. Now, one of the first questions I'll ask, I didn't put it on this list, but I asked them, have they done any upgrades to the property since they originally purchased it? Because when you're flipping through the photos of that old listing, you want to know for sure if it's pretty much exactly the same as what you see here from 3 to 5 years ago, depending on how old the MLS history is, or if they've done a whole bunch of upgrades to the property since they've purchased, which again gives you a little bit of a benchmark on how to adjust that property. Number one, adjust it for market from however many years old that MLS history is, but then adjust for what types of upgrades they've done to the property as well. Next on the list is, has another agent done a market evaluation for you recently on the property? Now, I asked this question very casually right after I asked about the appraisal or the tax assessment value. Have you had another market evaluation done on the property recently? Now, I want to ask this not because I want them to start thinking about the fact that they should have multiple agents giving them a market evaluation, but it lets me know if they have talked to other agents. And a lot of the time, these conversations I will do over the phone. This is either prior to me going over to the house or perhaps after me viewing the house. So bear with me on that, but it's more or less the same process when I go through the market evaluation with them. Sometimes I'll go to the house, look at it, and then I'll bring my laptop and go through all these details with them, and I will flip through the photos of the comparable listings so that they can see exactly what I see, and I can display with them in a period of about 15 to 20 minutes my experience, but also all of the information they're seeing, the same thing I am in real time, so that I'm not skewing any data at all. Then, of course, how many square feet is the property? How many bedrooms and bathrooms? What style of home is it? What is the location? Is there anything particular about the location that is relevant to the evaluation? Are there any upgrades on the property? What else can you tell me about the home? If you're on the phone with somebody and you ask them, what else can you tell me about the home? This is a very important question because that will help you determine what their personality style is. If you want more information on personality styles, check out this video next. And then, how is the condition of the home on a scale of 1 to 10? If you're on the phone with them, you want to know this information so that you can have a little bit more of an accurate idea of what the home might be worth. If you haven't seen it, their perspective of what the condition is may or may not be accurate. If you are in person with them and you ask them, what do you think is the condition of your property on a scale of 1 to 10, it will also give you a rough idea of how they see the condition of their home. If the condition of their home is actually, let's say, an 8, but they think it's a 10, then maybe that's something that you need to work on as far as perspective, because they might not compare to another property that was recently sold that is a 10 out of 10 if they are only an 8, but they think they're a 10. I've written down by now you should have a good idea of what the property is worth after asking a lot of these questions based on your experience. But go a little bit deeper here. I go ahead and I ask them, what would you like to see out of this property at the end of the day in a perfect world? Now they may or may not answer this question, but that is totally cool. I always ask the question because I like to know where they stand. I like to know what they're thinking. And if they push back a little bit, I just simply say, I do have a pretty good idea and sort of a gut feel ballpark of where it should end up. And I might need to see it in person in order to confirm that. I might need to double check the comparables again in order to confirm that. But I like to get a little bit of a gut check just to see what your perspective is, what your goals are, where you're seeing it from, etc. Most people have a pretty good idea of what they think their home might be worth or what they would at least like to get out of it. And then go ahead and ask, how soon would you like to have the property sold? Because this will identify what their motivation is. And do you have anything left owing on the property? Now, I ask this question simply because if I already have a pretty good gut feel of what it might be worth, and I know how long ago they purchased it, I like to ask what they might have left owing on the property before I dig into the details. And again, they may or may not be open to sharing that information. If I have a good rapport, a good relationship with the sellers, then it's usually pretty easy, straightforward question to ask. And if they don't answer the question, just say, that's totally fine, that's cool. Just a rough ballpark figure. It looks like, as I can see here, you purchased the property about 5 years ago. Did you put down 5% or 20% down? And usually I can estimate roughly what they have left owing on the property, and if they've lived in there for a very, very long time, they might have a very small mortgage, or it might be free and clear. So you can just generalize your questions a little bit so that it doesn't feel like you are prying into their personal financial situation. But I think it is good to know if they are in a negative equity situation. That's ultimately what you're trying to find out when you ask that question. And then I jump right into this. And this is what I'm talking about, sharing the information with them, whether it's on phone or in person, the comparables in real time. So here's what I found. And then I will tell them, this is how many houses are for sale in the price range that you're currently active in and in that neighborhood. Now, full disclosure, if there's not enough information in the particular neighborhood, if there's no comparables in their neighborhood for that price range, then of course what you need to do is maybe go to a few of the surrounding neighborhoods in order to find other active comparables that are in similar price ranges in other neighborhoods. Now, what styles of homes are currently listed and whether or not they are comparables. Because if you have a 2-story home and all of the rest of the properties that are listed in that neighborhood are bungalows, or vice versa, you can easily say, well, look there's this many houses for sale, but most of them are bungalows. So you would be the only 2-story, or maybe there's only one other 2-story. That is also relevant. Keep in mind as well, you also need to let them know, and you also need to be informed as to how many properties are listed for sale in your market in that price range, because you're always competing with properties in other neighborhoods. You're not just competing with properties in this specific neighborhood. So when you're relaying the market information to them, they need to know overall what the landscape is like for the market. But when you're looking at a value comparison, that is going to help you determine the price, although there are always different factors here at play as well. Now, how many houses sold in that same criteria over the past 3 to 6 months? This is important because this will tell you how many months supply of homes there are on the market. For example, let's say that there is a 3-month supply of homes on the market. Well, then we know that it could take 3 months to sell the house, but we also know that out of, let's say, 30 properties that are for sale, there's 10 selling per month. So in order to be at that top percentage, we need to be as competitive or more competitive than the current listings that are out there on the market so far. And of course, there's always new listings coming onto the market as well. And then you dig into the details a little bit as to what these particular homes have, what theirs doesn't, and then you go essentially from top to bottom on the listings until you find properties that are similar square feet, similar upgrades, similar bedrooms and bathrooms, etc. And then boom, in real time, right in front of the seller, whether it's on the phone or in person, you can say, here is an accurate comparable. Or you can go down the list very quickly and you can say, this one beats us, this one beats us, this one beats us. Wait a minute, this one has this, yours has that. Yours has this one has that. You are better for this, that, and this reason. For these other reasons, this property's better. This one is probably an accurate value comparison, but let's keep going. Boom, the next one is is like, oh hey, well this one's actually pretty comparable too. So now these are similar price ranges for these recent solds. Let's dig a little bit deeper. Next on the list is a lower price. Actually, we are heads and tails above this one. So let's just identify these two comparables and let's look and see how we fit into those. Compare them, split the difference, determine some sort of analysis based on those two solds that may have sold recently or within the last 3 to 6 months, and then one step further, go back and refer to what's currently for sale in the neighborhood and in the market overall in order to dig a little bit deeper to see how their house might fit in based on the price you're looking at. Then of course, you want to make sure that you're speaking to your experience. So for example, if there's a $500,000 house in Stonebridge and you sold a $500,000 house in Stonebridge 2 years ago or 3 years ago, you can tell them what that experience was like for you working in that neighborhood. Or you can say, I just sold a property to a buyer at $500,000 in Stonebridge and they ended up buying in Rosewood after all. The point is you speak to your experience and then you apply and make adjustments for how the market is different today versus how it was when you were working actively in that price range in that neighborhood previously. The reason that's a really important thing to do is because you're establishing that credibility as you go through, that they know you are an experienced person and you are speaking from your perspective and applying it to their situation. Other relevant things you might want to mention is what you get for the money. That's why I keep mentioning that you also need to take into consideration other neighborhoods. As well, you've got price points, buyer pools, the ceiling price, and how that affects your pricing, and then neighborhood trends. So neighborhood trends might just simply mean that there's certain things about this neighborhood that make it desirable or undesirable. And you know that as an experienced real estate person. And that doesn't mean you can't sell it. That just means that there's additional challenges that we need to take into consideration. And then as well, price points. That means that all of a sudden, if you're looking between 450 and 500, as an example, you've got lots of options. Once you hit 500 and above, you're getting a lot more value for the money that you spend, but there's less available, as an example. So it's easier to sell if we're under 500, because over 500, there's a lot more competition, the listings are a lot nicer, etc. Ceiling price basically means there's only so much that we can charge for a 1,600 square foot 2-story in Stonebridge, as an example, and based on price points essentially. And then what you get for the money. Now again, it's like if we're looking at, for example, townhouses, and townhouses are good from 250,000 to 300, but all of a sudden 3 to 350, yeah, it's entry level, but all of a sudden you can afford single family homes. So that's again ceiling price, but essentially what you get for the money and price points, it all kind of plays together. And then you might just want to give them another snapshot on sort of the macro scale and what's happening in the market overall. Again, an opportunity for you to display your experience and talk about days on market, how they've extended, what's happened in the recent years over the last 2 to 3 to 4 years, if they haven't bought or sold a house in the last 2 to 3 years, and then talk about things like asking price to selling price. How are people writing offers under list price? Is there bidding wars on properties potentially, or listings to sales ratio, which is essentially, is it a balanced market? Is it a seller's market? Is it a buyer's market? How that plays into the sale of their home. And then go back to what their motivation is. So say, tell me again, in a perfect world, how soon did you guys want to have this home sold by? And start even talking about stuff like, if we listed it this week, if we listed it today, if we listed it next month, if we listed it by such time. Start painting the picture for them for how it might look so that they will tell you more of their story for where they currently stand, and then solidify that motivation before you suggest a price. And then ask them again, what takes you out to that other neighborhood? Why do you want to move to a different city? They can tell you more about maybe their job transfer, or if it's an estate sale, it's pretty cut and dry, straightforward. If they're a first-time home buyer, or if they're a first-time home seller, I should say, then you might know that they're looking to buy a bigger house, but you want them to extrapolate a little bit more on their situation so that before you identify that price, you can start talking about what their goals are in selling this house. Because if they are selling this house and buying another one, the enjoyable part isn't selling the house. The enjoyable part is buying that bigger house that will fit for their family. And what they need to do is sell this house in order to get there. And I'm just here as a messenger of the truth of what's happening in the market today. And I'm here to help serve them in their real estate goals so that they can accomplish what it is they have set out to do in this real estate transaction. And then if they're wondering why you continue to ask, it's just you reiterate the fact that the better I understand your goals, the better I can serve you as your real estate person. And again, if they're talking to other agents, when you say something like that, they're going to be so relieved and happy to hear those words come out of your mouth. And then based on all what we've talked about so far, here's why I recommend this price. Then you wait for their reaction, but you kind of have a gut feel based on your questions as to where they stand already. Now, whether you've seen the property or haven't seen the property, you might say this is a ballpark figure. I'd like to see it in person. What day works for you? Is this just preliminary or looking to list it now or later, etc.? Then you might go a little bit further as well, or you might refer back to the condition and say, depending on the condition, depending on a few different factors, you haven't seen the property. But you also might say, if we list it at this price, here's what I think would happen based on your experience, right? If you list it at this price, I would still take the listing perhaps. If you list it at this price, it's probably going to be too high. We're probably pushing it too far. And in which case, doesn't mean it's impossible. I can't predict the future, but I think we would be chasing the market. And in my opinion, there would be more risk associated in that than if we were just to be straightforward with this. But I always tell them straight up front that I like to price a property where I put you in a position to get action and activity. And again, we don't know exactly where it's going to fit until we list it for sale. And if we talk about price today and then we wait 3 weeks to get it listed, it could be a different market by that time. We might need to revisit really quickly before we push the button and list your property for sale if there is certain things to get your house market ready for sale. And then I always say, look, at the end of the day, I want you to feel confident that when we list the property for sale, we are competitive, but we also want to know for sure that we're not leaving money on the table. So that is my perspective on pricing properties. I don't like to underprice properties just to sell them quick. I like to get you the best dollar possible, but I also want to make sure that you're competitive enough that we are actually going to get people looking at your home. So I hope you found value in this video. I'm going to do another video not too long talking about listing presentations and talking about how to get your property ready for sale. So thanks for being here today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you on this video next.